Thanks for being with us today. My name is Ian Andrews, and I'm the Executive Director at LakewoodAlive. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. So I'm going to turn it over to our Housing and Internal Operations Director, Allison Urbanek. Go ahead, Allison.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your Saturday morning with us today. We are tackling our 6th workshop of the Knowing Your Home workshop series this morning. Today we are joined by Avi Selva from Cleveland Lumber, who will be discussing kitchen and bathroom remodeling, which will really help us wrap our heads around these big projects, helping us to kind of figure out exactly how to approach and tackle these projects, and then answering really specific questions to keep you on track, saving you time, money, and tears in the long run. Avi will be doing our presentation, and we will be taking questions throughout. If you look on your screen, there should be a thought bubble with a question mark in it, I believe, and you can click on that and submit your questions there. I will get those and then share those with Avi. So please feel free to share your thoughts and questions throughout this workshop. Again, I want to thank all of you for being here along with Avi. Cleveland Lumber is a huge friend of LakewoodAlive. We're so thankful for all of their knowledge and expertise. And so I look forward to this presentation. So welcome, Avi.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Allison. Thank you very much for having me this morning.
Welcome. Thank you.
On behalf of Cleveland Lumber, thank you as well. And so this morning's presentation is regarding kitchen and bath remodeling. What we'll cover this morning are three projects that we'll review: a basic project, and then a more involved project, and finally a project that would probably involve a professional or more trades, for that matter, in remodeling your spaces. On the next slide, I know it's just a welcome slide, I think, correct? So if we can move on to the third slide, please. So regarding the basics of refreshing your spaces, especially in the kitchens and baths. So as we talk, of course, you're thinking about your own spaces, your own homes. I encourage you to kind of picture yourself, of course, in those spaces, and I think that's pretty easy for most of us. But remember that in a kitchen, we do a lot of cooking, of course. A lot of grease-laden vapor makes its way into the walls and onto the furniture or the cabinets, for that matter. So the basic remodel that anyone can do basically in 1 or 2 days, or even just a Saturday afternoon, would involve just painting the space. Most of this presentation will cover painting because it's a vital part of remodeling that space as well. So, but as for the basic project that we have in front of us now, you can usually do this project, again, in a Saturday afternoon or a Saturday and Sunday weekend project, with the fact that, again, as I've mentioned, we have these grease-laden vapors that hit our walls in the kitchen and a lot of moisture in our bathrooms, especially in our Lakewood homes. A lot of the ventilation is sometimes a little precarious, but for most of us who open up a window or open up a door, you try to keep that ventilation going, but still your walls end up with a lot of extra moisture that typically will be there throughout your time living there. So with that in mind, refreshing the space is a big component of this basic project. Minimal amount of material and tools required. Literally, you should have most homeowners will have most of these materials, or if not these tools, on hand. It's usually a paintbrush, a paint roller, a roller cover, maybe some caulk, a drop cloth, and if required, maybe some goggles or safety glasses. This is also a great opportunity to cover up those holes that we've all ignored. Like, for example, when I move a picture in my house or readjusting a shelf or something like that, we end up leaving holes on the walls that I always say, hey, I'll come back to it later, but later has literally been 2 years ago. And so now it's time for me to patch up those holes and patch up that part of the wall. It's also a great time to kind of go through and dust off those baseboards, because when we paint both the walls and the baseboards at the same time. Again, in a kitchen, this is probably a little bit more involved. This will probably involve more painter's tape, a little drop cloth to cover up your countertops or your cabinets. In the bathroom, definitely a little bit of a tighter space, but another opportunity to even include some technology into the paint in a bathroom specifically. So I've lived in many apartments and throughout my time and a few homes as well. And for spaces that don't get a lot of ventilation, sometimes you have mold growing in some corners or on the ceiling. It's typical because, again, of the amount of moisture that is contained in a bathroom. So most paint manufacturers nowadays, Sherwin, Benjamin Moore, Behr, will allow you to add an additive into the paint that you buy for a bathroom to prevent that mold from growing. So it kind of encapsulates the paint underneath that you're painting over, and also gives you a good resistive barrier to any of that mold growing in that bathroom. Again, this is during this remodel where you'll be removing all of the light switch covers, all of the electrical outlet covers, and allows you to paint really throughout the space so that you can refresh that space, especially in a bathroom. In a kitchen, same deal. If that's happening as well, sometimes it happens where you get some mold in a kitchen, and sometimes it's required to get that kind of paint, especially on a ceiling, because again, that hot air rises, and where it accumulates the most is, of course, on a ceiling, unfortunately. In a kitchen specifically, a lot of moisture is usually around a kitchen sink. For most of our homes in Lakewood, we have hopefully a window nearby in a kitchen or over your kitchen sink for that matter. So it's a great time to also refresh that window space as well. Water off the sinks or just around the general cleaning area for that matter ends up taking a beating throughout the year. So these basic projects can be handled over the weekend, and part of refreshing that kitchen may also involve some caulking as well, not only paint. Again, these are great opportunities to seal up any spaces that may be leaking. I remember at one point or another, I had a kitchen sink that kept leaking underneath, and it literally was just because I just needed to add some silicone on somewhere around that kitchen sink to keep it from leaking. You'll discover other things. So another part of this presentation is that as you move and as you weave through your project, you'll end up discovering other problem areas that you'll want to hit. This basic kind of run over usually leads to other projects, but again, this is a basic project that can be accomplished in a couple days. Some other items to consider, especially, yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. This is way better when we're in person, so thanks for dealing with my interruptions like this.
Sure, no problem.
So as I've been stuck here in my house, I have been really tackling a lot of little projects, and two of those projects have been to clean my bathroom vent, my fan, my exhaust fan. And let me tell you, it made a huge difference when I took down the cover and cleaned it and cleaned inside the vent. So I think that's also a really great suggestion, as well as over our stoves, that vent above it, whether you have one that vents out. I wish I had one that vents out. Mine does not. Mine just kind of circulates the terrible air in my face. So cleaning that filter also, I think, is super important as well.
Absolutely. And especially with these spaces, kitchens and baths get really beat up, especially because, again, the cabinetry is getting used almost every day. The appliances in the area are being used every day. As Allison mentioned, again, the vents are a great time to kind of get all those dust bunnies out of there. It's also an opportunity for any loose or creaking hinges for you to take care of that. What we mostly get in the store is, hey, I've got this kitchen cabinet. The door seems to be like loose from the one side. It's almost hanging off. Usually it's because the holes where the screws have gone into, the screws that go into the holes of the cabinet hardware have just become bigger than the screws themselves, just with normal day-to-day use. Real quick and easy fix for that is just get some simple wood glue, 5 or 6 toothpicks, put some wood glue on the end of the toothpicks and shove those right into the hole, let them dry, use a utility knife, cut off the excess, and now you've got a fresh bit of wood and glue to kind of drill your screws into, and that'll take care of the widening hole for that matter in that situation. But again, this is a great time to do that general maintenance that we've all ignored, the squeaky hinge, on some of our bathroom doors especially. It's a great time to take the pins out, remove that dust that accumulates on those hinges, get some lithium grease or something else that will not only prevent the hinge from collecting dust, but also will help in the smooth operation of that hardware. Any
Sure,
questions?
and I've noticed working from home, I'm hearing more squeaks because I'm not normally here as much. And I have been traveling around my house with my can of WD-40 and oiling hinges. So it's been very rewarding. I do have two questions for you.
Yes.
So the first question is, how safe are the chemicals in the mold-killing paint? If they prevent mold, is there any risk that they may harm us, by putting that into our paint?
The risk, there's always a risk no matter what. Even in the paint itself, with the VOC that comes off the paint, there is always a risk. The additive that you're putting into the paint, you would literally have to consume it in some way, shape, or form for it to be somewhat harmful. But at that point, you're also consuming the paint as well. So it's relatively safe for that matter.
Great, thank you. And then we have a question here from Chris. Chris wants to know, is there a product that you can use to fix dings in cabinets? I was given some waxy sticks when I bought the cabinets, but now I can't find them.
Okay, good question. So depending on the cabinet of what it is, if it's like a clear maple finish, it's a little bit harder to fix the dings. If it's a darker stained cabinet or a painted cabinet for that matter, you can always fill in the holes and then paint right over it. But generally, most stores will sell for example, Minwax sells them, and a couple other manufacturers sell it, where it is literally a wax and paint pencil basically, and you can paint in or color in those dings, and the wax will just kind of fill in that hole. But generally speaking, if it's a stained cabinet door, you're probably going to end up taking it off the hinges, sanding down that part, filling it in, and then trying to restain as best as you possibly can.
Great. And Avi, is that something that Cleveland Lumber carries?
Yes, to a certain degree. We don't have as much as like Sherwin might have a better selection at that point. They may have. Otherwise, of course, online, if you go to a couple websites, in particular Minwax, of course, that's a finishing manufacturer. They'll probably have more available through their websites. But we have maybe 5 colors in the store. It's all we really carry.
And can you order special colors, or should we, maybe tackle Sherwin first if we have a special color cabinet?
I would probably tackle one of the local stores first, just to see if they have, because sometimes you can mix them together. You can use one and then the other to kind of fill in. But after that, of course, definitely calling the company or going to their website is probably the next best thing.
Great. Thank you so much. We are all caught up with questions at the moment.
Okay. So if we move to the next slide, some of these basic projects, we'll see some examples in the next slide of some of these projects coming to fruition. So I know we're going to move to the next slide momentarily. But once we do, on the left-hand side, I'll just prime it while the slide is moving. We have a bathroom that has a vanity that looks like a piece of furniture, but there's no kitchen, there's no sink inside of there. This space was being refreshed with some paint and some tile on the left-hand side, and also they've redone the fixtures here. Again, if you're not comfortable with electrical, most of the fixtures sold nowadays on the market are very user-friendly. I'm not an electrical person whatsoever, and I've had much success installing new fixtures in my own home, including fans and light fixtures and pendant lights as well. They've tried to make it as easy as possible for almost anyone to hang their light fixtures. Also, I highly recommend that if you're not comfortable with electrical, most hardware stores will sell a $15 to $20 gadget that allows you to test the current that's going to the outlet box or from the outlet that you're going to connect the fixture to. that allows you just
so,
an
Avi,
extra bit of insurance.
I'm going to have you pause for just a second, sure. Avi. We're having just a little bit of a technical difficulty, just to let people know we're trying to advance the slide. Sure, we're getting a couple comments. Just wanted to let people know we're working on that. Okay, great. Thank you.
I wasn't moving along too quickly there, but I was just priming everybody for these two pictures, actually. So on the left-hand side, as I described already, we have a bathroom vanity without a sink. Again, this space is literally just getting a refresh of coated paint. Some tile on the wall on the left-hand side. That wall is not very big. It's just right there. They're using the tile as an accent piece. Again, if you've never tackled tile before, I certainly wouldn't try an entire wall, but maybe behind a sink or maybe a part of the bathroom can be tiled. That way you can try it out. Glass tile is a little bit more forgiving than some other porous tile, mostly for the fact that with glass tile, the grout can be wiped away pretty easily. It's very forgiving. The lines are very forgiving. Because of that reflective property of that tile. However, porous tile and anything geometric, that requires just a little bit more detail, a little bit more patience because, again, of the nature of the shape and how it looks to the eye. But on the left-hand side, again, this customer is just refreshing the space. They've removed the old vanity. They've purchased this vanity as a piece of furniture with drawers on the bottom. They've added a mirror and some light fixtures. Again, this is probably not a one-day project, but certainly a prep Thursday night, Friday night, and then move through the weekend with dedicating your entire weekend to completing that. On the right-hand side, it's probably a project that took them just a little bit more time, and this speaks to, I think, Chris's question about cabinets. So if you can't fill in that particular hole or cannot fill in that particular ding, you may want to consider repainting the cabinets altogether. It's a very popular way of refreshing a kitchen, especially right now. While we're all home staring at our kitchen cabinets daily. It allows you to kind of inject some color into the space. Maybe you might want to reconsider the tile or the backsplash on your kitchen currently. But this customer, literally, they already had the white countertops already. They just didn't like the color. They repainted some of the cabinets here, and of course, they added some doors and something else in the background, a Dutch door, but that's a project for another time. But these are just examples of what you can do to a space that might just need a little bit of a refresh and some added color. On the next slide.
So, Abby, before we change slides, and maybe this will go throughout here, you and I have talked about this, and I'm sorry if I offend anyone. I don't really understand white cabinets. They don't make sense to me. But are we seeing, I know we've talked about this. I don't even have children, and I don't understand white cabinets. So if you could, can we talk, are we seeing a transition now to a darker cabinet, or are people really still sticking with that white cabinet and gray countertop?
White is going to be around for a very, very long time. It's a trend. It's in vogue. It matches up well with a lot of pop colors inside of a kitchen. What I mean by that is that I see a lot of white cabinets, and if you can squeeze an island somewhere in the space, they go with a really funky color for the island so that it almost is the accent piece for the kitchen. White will be around, I think, for a very, very long time still because it's so versatile with the countertops. I've seen some kitchens where they have white countertops throughout, and they've chosen one or two wall cabinets as like a yellow or a bright blue, just to kind of mix in some color there. So today, I think it's just whatever you like and kind of whatever color is appropriate for you.
Okay, and before we move on, we have a question about prepping our cabinets. So if we are going to paint them, let's say someone has a maple stain finish, can you just paint over it, or how do you prep that cabinet for paint?
Good question. So again, as far as painting, and that's why painting is going to be just an overarching theme for this entire presentation. So cabinetry. Sherwin-Williams about 2 years ago now came out with a brand new product. Forgive me because the name is escaping me right this moment, but literally if you walk into any Sherwin, you say, hey, I'm painting some cabinets, they'll point you to the product. It is it's a product that was specifically designed by Sherwin to paint cabinets. So you don't have to degloss them, you don't have to sand them, you don't have to prep them other than just wiping them down and getting them clean. And then you literally start painting with this new product that Sherwin came out with. And for most customers that have gone that route, it's literally a 2-coat process and you're done basically painting your cabinets. It covers very well and the chip factor is down to a minimum. Now, I will warn everybody, for most cabinets that are manufactured, you have what are called rail and style lines. These are the little lines that you'll see around the edges of the cabinet. When you paint a cabinet, especially in our kitchens, while you're kind of cooking everything and the whole ambient temperature of the room is rising and then cools quickly, all in a matter of hours, sometimes that warm up and cool down with all that moisture will cause those lines to be more pronounced, especially if you paint the cabinet. For most people, it doesn't bother them, but that's just kind of the buy-in when you start painting your cabinets.
Thank you. And so this is a shameless plug, but on July 16th, we're actually partnering with Sherwin-Williams on a cabinet refinishing workshop. So more than likely that's going to be a video, not a webinar probably, but probably a video online presentation so that you can actually see the actual process. But we will be partnering with them on Thursday, July 16th for cabinet refinishing.
Excellent.
Great. Okay, we're all caught up now. Next slide.
Okay. All right, so moving on with the basic ideas here. Again, on the left-hand side, all we've done here on this space is just change the molding around the door. This is, again, probably not a simple project for some, but for those of us that might have a miter saw or a compound miter saw at home and some caulk, some nails and some glue and maybe some paint as well. It's something that could be easily done in an afternoon if you're just tackling 1 or 2 rooms. It does refresh the space very nicely, as you can see. On the left-hand side, we go from a simple, probably 2 1/4 casing on one side to a nice craftsman style on the left, and allows you to go with a wider or taller base on the left-hand side. That's also another popular item to include on remodels or any type of refreshing of spaces, is just a taller base. I recommend not going too tall, especially if your walls are only 8 feet tall, because the taller the base and the shorter the walls, it starts to look a little cramped and your eyes really start to fool with you there. As far as moldings inside of a kitchen and a bathroom, we get this question often. Which is best? Is it primed finger jointed material or is it PVC? You have your choice of both nowadays, or just regular pine boards. Especially in a bathroom, I would probably consider something PVC based so that you don't have to worry about them getting wet and warping and then soaking up more moisture. Now, you do pay a little bit more for the PVC, but its resilience to moisture is by far the better performer of all of the products that are out there. On the right-hand side of this photo, we see another bathroom refresh here. I believe in this one, the customer refreshed not only the tile, these nice geometric fish scale tiles, and the oil rub bronze or the matte black faucet and sink and bath hardware. Again, this is another color that is around to stay for a while. Matte black and oil rub bronze has really taken the industry by storm all over again. In the reflection of the mirror on the right-hand side, you can see that the towel bar is also the same color. You don't have to match. Some customers have kind of installed a rose gold on the sinks, and then in the bathrooms, a dark bronze or a matte black. It's literally whatever taste you like, of course. But the real focal point of this bathroom is the fish scale tile. It's a beautiful tile to install. It's glass, so again, it's forgiving on the install, but it looks really cool. Adds movement to the room in the sense that your eyes just want to keep going up the walls instead of going down towards the floor. And of course, the colors nowadays available are endless. This is a really nice, like seafoam green, if you will, or a nice color that really adds depth to the room. Again, as you refresh these spaces, as you paint, you can always accent paint one wall. You can paint your cabinets a different color. This is all left to the imagination, of course, and I encourage you as well. Sherwin does a great job of offering these small little quart size samples. Yes, they're maybe $6 or $7 a piece, but they are worth it instead of buying a $60 or $80 gallon of paint. That way you can try out the actual paint in your space. Sometimes, in my opinion, the color swatches don't really give you the actual feel of that paint color. So it is worth it to just buy that little sample, take it home, paint a section of the wall, and see how it's really going to match up with the rest of the room.
Now, I have to say, Avi, I love those fish scale tiles. Those are amazing. And that color, I mean, I just want to lay in that bathtub right now. It looks great. Can we talk just a minute before we move on to comfort height toilets? Now, this may not be something that people want to think about, but I don't know about you, but when I have sat on a comfort height toilet, I feel like my life changed.
Yes.
You know, a little bit of a taller, for a taller toilet, you know, getting on and off, let's get real here. Sometimes they're really low. Comfort height toilets really, I think, have made a big difference.
They have, and they are making a resurgence, especially for those of us that travel often. We go to different hotels. Hotels have a lot of comfort height toilets available in their hotel rooms nowadays. But yes, this is another idea that we were going to touch upon as we move through the different projects. So when you reconsider a bathroom, no, that's okay. But I mean, in terms of the toilets, yes, as you move through a bathroom, when you start removing items instead of just painting or refreshing or just caulking in, when you start reconsidering removing items out of the bathroom, that is probably the second item that always gets touched upon. Is first of all, it's the vanity, and then it's the toilet. So we can always touch upon that on the next few slides.
Great. I do have a comment that I want to share from Sarah. Sarah said she just wanted to let us know that most glass tile is not very forgiving when you cut it. So make sure you have a high quality blade on your wet saw if you're doing this yourself to you know, ensure the best project that you can. Great comment, Sarah. And I do want to do another shameless plug. I feel like that's all I'm doing. LakewoodAlive has the Lakewood Toolbox. And you can come, and for a $30 membership, you have the ability to borrow tools at no additional cost. You leave us a deposit, you return that tool in good working order, and you will get your deposit back. This year we have changed our structure. We had to get our feet under us, kind of figure out everything last year. This year, there are no longer fees to utilize our tools. So you get a membership, you leave us a deposit, bring the tool back, you get your deposit back. Why buy when you can borrow is our new motto. Moving on.
That's awesome.
Yes.
On the next slide,
thank you.
The next slide just emphasizes some finishes. So this is the next question that I always get from customers is, what's the difference between eggshell? What's the difference between gloss? Is there a high gloss available? Nowadays, I mean, I remember even painting 10 years ago, you technically only had maybe a few finishes, but now many manufacturers are coming out with different finishes because they know that a high gloss blue will look awesome in a room. So this is a way of kind of emphasizing that. We tried to get reflections in these pictures. That's why we chose them. So on the left-hand side is a high gloss blue. Again, may not be the color for everybody. I would probably want to paint that like a mustard yellow in my opinion, but at least you get to see what that finish looks like. It's a nice high gloss, reflective, but it also adds some depth to that space so that you really can see something different. And I've actually seen some customers do a high gloss on one wall in a kitchen or a bathroom, especially around cooking surfaces that you might be wiping down. High gloss may be appropriate for you for that particular reason. On the right-hand side, we have a satin finish on cabinets. Now, this is kind of a misleading picture because these were actually spray painted by a contractor. However, some of the paints that are now available through Sherwin, as you'll hear on the 16th, if you're around for that webinar, shameless plug again, you'll see that some of the paints nowadays that Sherwin is also selling they have what's called like a self-leveling property to them, so that you can lay these cabinet doors down and the paint will actually dry to as close to as the spray finish as possible. One piece of warning, or just a heads up here, don't think that buying the Rust-Oleum cans and trying to spray paint them at home is going to give you the same finish. If you're doing like a stool or a simple furniture piece, different story. However, that kind of finish that you see on this photo on the right-hand side was done by a professional contractor with a professional sprayer. I have done my own cabinets in a spray paint. It does not look like that until I actually borrowed a professional spraying system from somebody. That's when you get that type of finish. So that will cover as well as part of the slides that are coming up.
And Avi, we do have a paint sprayer at the Lakewood Toolbox. Just throwing that out there. I know, and it is a professional, high-quality grade 1 from Sherwin-Williams. So make sure you come and check that out.
Are you open? Are you open today with that toolbox then?
We are open currently by appointment. So yes, if you call the number, you will probably get someone, Matt Clark will answer. But yes, by appointment, we are normally open regular hours, but in our current state, we are taking appointments only, but they are more flexible to allow to meet the people's needs. I do have a question here from Jeff. Jeff's asking, for cabinets in a high-use area like kitchens, how does a satin finish hold up with fingerprints, grease, and food drippings, etc.?
It holds up fairly well, but again, just like anything else, you'll have to wipe it down just as much as any other finish that you have applied. It's not that, I won't say it's easier to wipe, because again, depending on how long the grease stays on there, we cook a lot of, in our family here, a lot of pasta sauces. So I'm constantly wiping down the cabinets with pasta sauce, especially the splatter that goes like 5 feet. But I have to admit, I just found some splatter last night that's probably been there for like 6 months, and boy, was it caked on.
And it came right off after you scrubbed it a little? No problem?
Yeah, I scrubbed it enough that I might have to use that paint sprayer that you have there with Matt.
Okay. Got it. So, and you have white cabinets, right?
Yes, I do.
See? Okay. Well, but you can see stuff on there. So, I mean, at least you can see what you need to clean. Okay, so we have a follow-up. So Jeff wants to know, how does the finish hold up with wiping down? So he said, I thought certain finishes hold up better against scrubbing.
Most of the paints do hold up pretty well, especially a satin finish. Mostly, I think it depends on how many coats of paint are on those cabinets. If it's a factory finish, they generally have two coats of a baked on, or at least oven dried coats of paint on there. Those, of course, are going to hold up the best. But it mostly depends on how many coats and, of course, the quality of the paint. I tend to kind of lean towards the two bigger brands, Sherwin and Benjamin, especially on the higher end, the duration from Sherwin, just because, again, the quality of the paint, it paints really well. You can't really tell where I've stopped and I've started, because sometimes I'll start a room and then have to go off and do something with the family and then come back. On a cabinet door especially, I think the higher end, especially from Sherwin, is probably a pretty good paint to use for cabinets. Or that other paint that I mentioned earlier today.
The cabinet paint?
Correct.
Okay, so just a follow-up to that, and I'm not sure that there's a legit answer to this, but I'm going to ask you. A question is Sherwin-Williams paint has gotten very expensive over the years. So
yes,
is it worth the money, and if so, why? So I guess we could really make that more generalized. So the higher level of paints are pretty expensive, as you mentioned, $80 a gallon at some of them. Is it worth spending that money?
So I'll answer this question with this. I used to paint with Benjamin Moore before I started working at Cleveland Lumber, and I would only use their super spec paint, mostly because, again, the coverage was great. On the second coat, it looked regal when you were done. I never really got that from Sherwin, even though some customers said, hey, I prefer to use Sherwin over Benjamin Moore. And I would always warn them, hey, if I have to give this a third or fourth coat, I'm just giving you the forewarning now, it's going to cost more. So I remember at the time, a gallon of comparable line from Sherwin to Benjamin Moore was maybe $40 or $50. But I think now the technology has gotten so good, I've transitioned now to away from Benjamin Moore and into Sherwin a little bit more, mostly because, again, the paint is so forgiving, especially on those higher lines. So what are you paying for on the higher line from Sherwin or from Benjamin Moore? What you're really paying for there is that the coverage is just better. And what I mean by that is that when you roll it on, for most of us, when we paint, we leave these little little bubbles behind that end up showing some of the paint underneath. The coverage on that end is much better. Also, the paint itself holds up beautifully. We painted here our kitchen 2 years ago. Our son has hit the walls with all sorts of stuff. Yes, of course, the wall may ding, but the paint itself doesn't move. He hasn't chipped off any paint or anything like that. So it does hold up pretty well after 2 coats. And I think that's the other mark of a good quality paint. If you have to give it more than 2 coats, it's probably because the paint is thin, or maybe the chemical compound that makes up that paint is just a little weak, in my opinion. But with Sherwin's duration or higher, almost the second coat is just there for insurance, not on the level of I have to give it a second coat. So I think it does. They have a pretty good line of product going right now.
Great. Thank you, Avi. We're all caught up on questions right now.
Okay. On the next slide, we're reviewing kind of the weekend warriors. So again, this is a light remodel. Now you're kind of removing things and not just painting and caulking and filling in and spackling. This is probably, again, a Friday night prep, Saturday work, Sunday work through the evening, and you're finally done probably mid-afternoon, late evening with this project. It's going to require a helper probably, because for most of us, moving some furniture around may require 1 or 2 people. And the materials here and the tools are a little bit more specialized. So you'll need Allen wrenches and maybe some wrenches for plumbing. For those of us who aren't comfortable with plumbing, again, depending on what it is, some of us still have copper in our house, so you have to be comfortable working with copper. Today, we have new technology in the sense of PEX and shark bites that you can convert some plumbing from copper into this plastic tubing, if you will. It's a little bit more forgiving for those of us who are not comfortable with plumbing, especially on my end where I over tighten everything and end up breaking the threads. More on that for another afternoon or morning session, but it's kind of a plug and play system. When you start using shark bites or the PEX systems, you literally it's like Legos. You just stack them together, push, and you're done. The only secret to that is, of course, you have to buy a tool to unlock it in case you cut something too short or need some changes to be done. Again, this all falls under the rule of you needing more specialized tools and materials. I don't know if Allison has one of those release tools as part of her toolbox.
I don't, but that's a really great suggestion. We will add it onto our list. Shark bites are a great product. Yeah, so we will definitely look into that. Great suggestion.
So as far as electrical, so now you're no longer really just kind of removing the faceplate off of fixtures and repainting them or painting them to a different color. Now you're physically removing them and adding something completely different. This may require prepping the wall around it as well. Maybe you're going from a one light fixture to a pendant, so now you have to run maybe some conduit or break open into the wall and maybe redo the box that's there. For some of us that are installing ceiling fans or anything like that, or maybe an exhaust fan, or removing an old exhaust fan from a bathroom, this may require you to kind of get into the cavity and the ceiling, remove some of the old fan parts, and installing brand new. On the subject of exhaust fans also, please make sure you are exhausting properly. That means all the way outside. I can't tell you how many customers we have midsummer or late summer that come in and go, hey, you know, my paint is bubbling in our bathroom or on the wall. Well, that's because all that moisture from the bathroom was only being exhausted into their upstairs attic or to an empty space above that bathroom, especially on a second story. You have to make sure that it's exhausting properly all the way out of the building so that vapor can get out properly.
Ugh, I can only imagine all of those problems. Ugh, the mold and
sure.
Bad news bears.
The mold and everything else. Hopefully you've caught it early enough, and usually the bubbling paint is the big indicator because the moisture is just falling basically down onto the ceiling. But for some other customers, it's been going on for years, and there's other things that are started to rot, so that also causes some other problems. It's not to scare you away from those longer projects, but just make sure you think about more than just the surface that you're working on. Think about what's behind it, what will be affected behind it, and especially when you start screwing things into the wall or breaking into the wall. On the next slide, we'll see a remodeled kitchen. Again, this one involved replacing the toilet, so that's where I'll get into this that part of the presentation on toilets and commodes for that matter.
Okay, so while we're waiting for our slides to catch up here, I do have a question of what is the best way to clean your kitchen and bathroom walls that are painted?
So generally, you can use a little bit of warm water and a tiny drop of soap so that when that evaporates, the soap is going with it. Typically, here at our house, we use basically a paper towel or a like a microfiber towel, if you will, that you can always wash and reuse, and just warm water. I know for that grease, for those greasy parts of the wall, you might want to use a little bit of soap. That way you can wipe it off later. But that's all it really requires, just a little soap and water. For some of us that have other paint on the walls, though, you may take off the paint. That's okay. That's okay in the sense that it's just another example of you having to probably repaint or just add a different paint coat on there for future cleaning ease.
Great, thank you.
So on this slide, we have some light remodeling ideas. Here we have a bathroom where the tile was, of course, changed, but if you're not comfortable with that, again, hopefully a friend or a family member has some experience with tile. They can help you with that. But the easier ones are the commode or the toilet being replaced here, some shelving units added to above the toilet, painting here. In regards to a toilet, so nowadays toilets are very efficient, or they try to be very efficient compared to some of our toilets that we were all growing up with. So replacing a toilet is not as hard as most people make it out to be. You just have to make sure you drain it properly and make sure you get as much water out of there as possible. You use usually 2 screws that are fixing the toilet to the floor. And of course you need a wax ring because 2,000 years of sewer technology, we still rely on a wax ring. Even though I can order a pizza, an iPhone, and everything else on my phone, I still rely on 2,000-year-old technology for a commode. But the short story there is that the wax ring, they sell 2 different sizes, a regular size and then a beefier one. Always go for the beefier one because when you set the new toilet, you want it to squish together and create a tight seal. Now, if I have any plumbers or anyone with experience with plumbing on the line, we will always differ on this following opinion. So some plumbers and some hardware store managers will tell you always caulk or silicone around the base of the toilet. I don't ever do because if there's ever a leak, it'll just accumulate there and I won't find out about that leak for probably weeks or a month after the leak has started. I'd rather the leak happen now within a few days instead of waiting weeks to find out about that leak. But again, some people will differ on that opinion.
Sure, just I guess it depends what you're hoping for. I think I lean more towards you, no caulking.
I do as well, but again, we've had some lively discussion in the store regarding caulk around a commode. Let's just put it that way.
Sure. And
so as far as the bathroom, and then kind of considering a kitchen, I don't have a kitchen photo here, but we will get a kitchen photo in the next couple slides. But as far as a kitchen, this may involve you removing some cabinets. Maybe you want to reconsider cabinets here in the sense of maybe one is broken or it's broken beyond repair at that point. So you might want to remove the cabinet. Removing the cabinet is not as easy as just removing it because you have a countertop mostly likely on top of it. So you have to kind of do a little bit of planning. So the emphasis on this weekend warrior idea is that it's going to take a little bit of planning. You've kind of planned this for a couple weeks out for this weekend project. You've kind of considered all the variables. Removing a toilet may not be as easy. You might find some rot underneath that you might have to take care of. So just keep that in mind when you're kind of moving through these longer weekend projects. When you start applying the tile, you might find a problem. When you start removing that vanity, you might find something underneath the vanity that might need to be replaced that you didn't consider in the beginning. I just warn everybody on these not larger projects, but certainly mid-range projects that you will have something that will come up. It's always something. You either need a different screw, a longer screw, a different bit. Something always comes up. I just ask everybody to just have patience. It's kind of a learning process and it's kind of a journey. So just take it for what it's worth. And since you're refreshing the space, you get to learn about your home in a different way. And that way you can find those problem areas now. And I also encourage you to look at it as just that. You're finding a problem area that might erupt later. You'd rather find it now while it's small and you can contain it rather than it being some giant project later. It's also a good time to, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say it's always great to be proactive instead of reactive with these projects.
Absolutely. As far as this kitchen, I just want to stay on this slide for one more minute. I'm going to emphasize in the bathroom, especially the windows, because this is a question that we get often. Can I replace a window? Certainly you can replace a window. There's no problem on that end. But as far as the window itself, I may want to consider getting obscure glass in case you face an open area or your neighbor for that matter. And window technology nowadays is very good. So it does come with some other technology like low E properties and other reflective properties that will help with that winter chill maybe through that window as well, especially if you have one in the bathroom. Also, the materials that vinyl windows are made of nowadays don't mold as easily as some of our predecessors have in the past. Nowadays, you have some pretty good technology around there, especially in this bathroom where you have almost like a sill at knee height. You're going to get a lot of accumulated water there. This is a great time to maybe paint that opening with that mold-resistant paint, or even add a graded ledge where you take the bottom ledge and you kind of add something that will let the water run off towards the tub or towards the drain for that matter, instead of it just accumulating on that flat surface.
So Avi, before we move on, we do have a question about bathrooms.
Yes.
So we have a question from Sue. Sue is saying, we have the original large glass tiles in our full bath. The grout needs to be replaced and the grout lines are very narrow. Are there any recommendations?
I don't have a one answer fits all for that. That one is going to be a little bit of a time-consuming project because you have to get between there. Honestly, you should probably regrout that. There is no real silver bullet in that respect. It is going to be a little bit of a time-consuming project. That tile is probably beautiful. I wouldn't touch it. I mean, depending on how it looks and how you like it. But certainly regrouting it, you may require somebody to come in and do that for you who has a little bit more specialized tools, because at that point you're using kind of a multi-tool with a very thin blade to go between the tiles. And now that professional is not going to chip those tiles. They may have a little bit more specialized tools to get between there and not harm or mar that tile.
Great, and thank you very much. And then we have another question of any recommendations on properly removing mold from a bathroom window before repairing/repainting?
So it depends on the material that the window is made out of. For some of our homes, our older homes, we have wood windows. The only thing that you can do there is probably sand down to the original wood as best as you possibly can. But now you're removing that window for probably a few days, so you're going to plug up that window temporarily while you're working on it. If it's wood, you're going to sand as much as you possibly can safely without taking down too much of the wood. And now you've created bigger gaps, because that's the biggest risk right now, is that for wood windows especially, the coats of paint over time have acted as a sealer between all of the cracks and nooks and crannies that wood has created in itself. Now you risk creating just deeper crevices, or if not bigger spaces between the sashes themselves. It's not anything scary. You just have to add some foam, some sticky foam to one side or whatnot, but some people don't want to do that. They just want to retain the old wood look. But that's probably my best advice from this at this point, depending on the material that the window is made out of.
And I would add to that, Avi, obviously you can use a little bleach and water to kill the mold. That always does the trick before you start sanding. And then always remember, depending on especially how old or what material that is, to wear gloves, a mask, protective eyewear, just because there might be some lead-based paint on there. So make sure you do some wet sanding if you are doing any sanding.
Very good. Also another great point. Yes.
All right, we're all caught up, Avi.
Okay, on the next slide, as we move to the next slide, on the left-hand side, again, we have this glass tile that's taken the industry by storm. Very bright colors, refreshing colors. I mean, that shower looks like it's in the middle of California somewhere, and I wouldn't be surprised if the beach is right outside that window. But again, this refreshes the space completely. You can't really see it, but there is a sheet of glass on the right-hand side that is reflecting part of the window. This person elected not to have any type of, oh, sorry about that. Hold on one second. Yes. So this person elected to just have a sheet of glass there for their curtain. Again, depending on how you feel about that and what you'd like your space to look like, it may be appropriate to have that and may not be. On the right-hand side is another great example of finishing in a kitchen or a bathroom for that matter. Instead of using paint, you may want to install some wainscoting or some other type of feature in your bathroom or your kitchen. It just adds a different depth to the space. This customer elected to have some type of wainscoting or vertical cladding for that matter up to a chair rail, and then above that chair rail just some wallpaper. I mean, again, wallpaper is also making a comeback as well. But they've done it with some really cool designs and finishes as well. The part of the picture on the right-hand side that I'd like to emphasize is the floor, and that tile is probably the size of about a quarter, and they're round, or if not hexagon, or some type of geometric shape on the ground that's been applied, grouted. That's a very regal look nowadays. It's a very nice look. It's a black floor that just makes the room whole. But again, that's a little bit more specialized there in terms of the install, especially on a floor. So that may require a professional to be included in that project. On the following slide, we have more kitchen. On the following slide, we have kitchen ideas here. So on the left-hand side, we have a customer who elected to redo their kitchen in white cabinets. Sorry, Allison. And instead of hiding their cookbooks, they've left one cabinet open, basically, and used that as a bookshelf. They've installed new backsplash on the back, brand new country sink, and brand new kitchen faucet. Again, in terms of kitchens, what's really taking the industry by storm still are the country country sinks. Very popular option in a multitude of finishes: ceramic, stamped copper, stainless steel. Literally, it's whatever you like. The country sink, of course, is a one bowl sink with one drain in the middle. So I just encourage you to think about that twice, because for some, they don't really consider that two basin. You can keep dirty dishes on one side, clean dishes on the other, or keep one side clean at all times. Whereas now with a one sink, with a one bowl basin, basically you have both dirty and you're trying to wash dishes on top. Again, depending on what you like and how it fits in your space. On the right-hand side, we have a customer who painted their cabinets from a white now to this nice aqua color or this seafoam green again, or seafoam blue, excuse me. And then they added some wainscoting between the cabinets. So you don't have to use a typical tile backsplash for your backsplash. You can always use some type of vertical paneling as well. Now, wainscoting comes in a variety of applications. You can use single boards or you can use sheets. Sheets are a little bit easier to handle because all you have to do is cut them in one dimension and just nail them out and paint them. However, you have different options there as well. The customer also refreshed the space with brand new paint, and as you see in the background, a mirror just to kind of expand on the size, I guess, of the space, or just add a mirror there. Briefly on doors that you see on the right-hand side, again, door styles have taken many roads now. It's no longer the 6-panel door that we've all grown up with. Nowadays, it's choosing a 2-panel door, a craftsman style door, whatever your fancy might be. You can always get very fancy with your doors, and some customers have elected to do one style on one floor and a different style on another, depending on their spaces as well. Again, the overarching theme here is paint and, of course, choice and what's available to you. There is no wrong or right way anymore. I think some designers, even nowadays, that come into the lumberyard, some of their designs as well incorporate different finishes in different parts of the room, because you may want one room to entertain or one floor to entertain. The other one is more relaxing, so it uses more relaxing features and less clutter, for that matter, or simple designs for that matter.
Hey, Avi, can I ask you
Yes.
about sinks for a minute? Okay.
Yes, please.
So let's go back to that country style sink. I know those have been very popular. I know we all watch HGTV and have all these amazing hopes and dreams, and our kitchen will be done in 30 minutes or less. But
yes.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do in TV. So if we could talk about sinks for just a moment, and maybe talk about just briefly the different types of materials, maybe starting from the easiest care material to the maybe most needy material on sinks. Okay.
So as far as easiest, it's probably going to be something stainless, because it's probably the most ubiquitous material available to the public in terms of sinks. You go to any Lowe's or Home Depot, every sink there is probably 80% to 90% stainless steel. Stainless steel has its advantages. It's easy to maintain, and some of them have, depending on if you're going to install an incinerator or anything else under the sink, they have a vibration or sound coating on the outside of them for an extra $50 or $60. It doesn't make a difference. For some people it does, for others it doesn't. But especially when you turn on that incinerator, it deadens that sound. But again, most of those are all stainless steel sinks. So that's probably the easiest. Next up from there is probably something, again, in some type of metal. I know some customers are elected to go with like a rose gold or a copper look. Now, some customers that can afford an actual copper sink go for the copper sink. That's probably the least maintenance. That's probably the most maintenance that you probably have to deal with, because it does start to turn colors if it's actual copper. So there is some like yearly sealing that you have to do. I don't really know very much what that entails, but I know that copper is definitely not the way to go if you don't want to mess with it every year or every 6 months, for that matter. Ceramic is beautiful. It shines beautifully. It's, to me, a very classic finish for a kitchen or a bathroom in ceramic. The only downside to ceramic is that over time you get these spider veins that are like gray or black, and that's usually the coating that it starts to get chipped, or just from the hot water that you're pouring into it and the cold water that you're using to rinse, it starts to kind of decay the very top surface of the ceramic. So probably every 5 to 10 years you probably have to reseal the ceramic, but it's beautiful. The other downside to ceramic is that if you have stainless steel pots or any type of metal pots, which most of us do, you can end up scratching the surface as well. So you get, again, all these little gray lines that occur throughout the day or throughout the week. For some customers, they like it. For some, they don't. But I think it's a very beautiful product to have. But once you get past that, you have all these other man-made products. You have like, which is also very popular right now, like a stone. It's a stone composite sink. They're probably 40% over stainless. These are the sinks that you see that are like black, or if not really dark gray, and they look like stone. Some of them don't. Some of them are man-made products. Those are also maintenance-free as well. You do pay for some of that maintenance-freeness, quote unquote, up front, because they are sometimes 60, 70% more than stainless. They happen to be thicker products as well, just because they need to maintain some stability. They handle heat extraordinarily well. I mean, you can literally throw a pot of boiling hot water, and you won't hear it move, or you won't see it move at all. Whereas with stainless, you might hear it pop, because again, the stainless is either expanding or contracting with the amount of heat that you put into it. But that's kind of where I would take it. On the least maintenance required is probably stainless.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure. So on the next slide, we're in a completely different neck of the woods now. This is no longer a weekend project anymore. This I would consider to be a special project, or somebody who is very familiar with electrical, is very familiar with plumbing. They can probably install cabinets within a day and have the countertops installed on a Sunday, and then be ready to start cooking on Monday night. So this is somebody who's really taken the time to really plan this out and really tackle a project. And this is where we say in the store, the 5 Ps will hold true, that if you properly prepare, it'll prevent poor performance in the end. You have all the tools necessary to complete the project. You're very comfortable with installing PEX, or if not, converting from copper to PVC, or vice versa. This project's probably going to take you a number of days to prepare for. You may be able to complete the final touches in a couple days or a weekend, but you've probably worked on one weekend and have bled into the second or third weekend to get the project done. Again, just like the previous project, you'll have some more specialized tools. Here you'll need a nail gun or some type of, because now you're framing something in. Maybe you have a wall that you're going to add to the bathroom because you want to extend a wall out to make a nice taller shower with maybe a rain, gosh, I've lost my train of thought there. The shower head, a rain shower head coming out from some other part of the bathroom, maybe the ceiling or another wall. Here you're completely redoing the space altogether, maybe even moving plumbing from one side to another. So here I encourage you, again, this is something that you're going to do with probably 1 or 2 people, or maybe even bring in a trade. Maybe you've demoed most of it, 90% of the project. Now you need a trade to come in, maybe a plumber. You've removed some of the flooring as well, so that the plumber can come in and move plumbing from one side to another, maybe moving a drain. For most of our Lakewood homes, it's probably not something that you want to tackle on your own, because it will require some specialized knowledge, especially in the tight quarters of our homes in Lakewood. You're not really moving plumbing around in one weekend at all. And certainly you're going to reinvent the space in some ways. Just had a customer come in and said, "Hey, I'm knocking down a wall in my kind of dining room that connects to the kitchen. We're reconfiguring the cabinets. We're moving the sink from one wall to another, and that is, again, a monumental undertaking. You're probably without a kitchen for a few weeks there, and you're comfortable eating takeout for a couple of weeks, or maybe a week, if not maybe a week." If we move on to the next slide briefly.
If you are a weekend warrior, special project type person, and you do want to remove a wall, just make sure you have done your homework and your due diligence to make sure you know what you're removing, and you don't want to have any sort of structural issues if you take down the wrong wall.
Absolutely. Again, this is something that you've planned on for weeks, or if not months at a time. You've consulted a few people before you start tackling this project. And just like Allison mentioned, especially in our homes in Lakewood, you definitely do not want to knock down a wall that is structural in any way, shape, or form. Again, there's a lot of homework leading up to this project. On On the following slide, we give examples of what this project looks like. So this bathroom on the left-hand side, and I'll wait for the slide to catch up. But on the left-hand side,
do we need to go back
if we can go back 2 slides. There we go. One more. Beautiful. On the left-hand side, we have a kitchen, a bathroom. That bathroom has been completely redone. Unfortunately, for the amount of slides and for this presentation, I've removed kind of what the project looked like in the beginning. But there was no sink here, and there were no cabinets here. And in fact, there weren't even windows on this wall. So this contractor had to add windows, had to move plumbing to this side of the bathroom. They've completely redone the space. On the right-hand side, again, we've removed the vanity. We've moved plumbing to this wall now because the plumbing was actually near the window on the other side. And now we've added some really cool dimension to the walls. We've added this like ladder look, or the coffered look to the walls. Again, this is another way of, instead of using wallpaper or using paint, you can use a completely different medium to add some dimensionality to the room. This is also possible in a kitchen because, again, for some of us, the kitchen maybe it's a layout that was installed in the home maybe 60, 70 years ago. It may not be appropriate for you now. Maybe you want a bigger range or just a different cabinet configuration altogether. So it allows you to kind of move some stuff around and plan for it. I want to emphasize one more time that the Weekend Warrior, this is the special project. This is something that is a project that you want to take on, but of course you've done enough planning for. This is something that you will, unfortunately, probably with our homes, especially that are 60, 70, 90 years old, you're going to have a couple alligators and a bear waiting for you inside of those walls. And what I mean by that is that you might have some insulation surprises that you didn't see before. You might have some framing problems that you didn't anticipate before, some rot or something else that you didn't anticipate. So this is where the projects kind of escalate from there. And this is the time also that if you didn't have insulation in some of these rooms, for you to install some modern insulation or even foam there. And again, when I say foam, it's another specialized trade because you can't really breathe that foam while you're spraying it in because it's very dangerous for your lungs. So some, or if not 80% of our customers that come into the store have hired an insulation contractor to actually install that foam for them because they wear a suit and specialized ventilators while they're installing it. But I want to emphasize that this is the time then to re-engineer your spaces. So this Weekend Warrior project, special projects, is mostly about re-engineering the space to your liking, but you're comfortable with what you're about to tackle. It, again, may involve moving electrical as well, plumbing especially, and adding fixtures and furniture where it wasn't before.
So, Avi, if I can interject for just a moment. So
yes.
I think that you really pointed out here some really great things, and I'm just going to do more shameless plugs and get on my soapbox for just a moment. If people are thinking about making large improvements like bathrooms or kitchens, it's really time to be forward thinking. You know, where are you in your life cycle? How long are you going to be staying in your home? And if that's the home that you're hoping to live in for the rest of your life, you know, maybe be forward thinking and installing either extra support 2x4s for grab bars for the future, or put them in, and towel bars are great grab bars, but you have to obviously put in the correct product. But really be forward thinking both in your kitchen and your bathroom to ensure that you can stay in your home as safely as possible. So it's really great to be forward thinking and putting in those additional safety options when you're making these large projects. And we do have a workshop June 11th. It's our next workshop on universal design, really learning to design your home for all aspects of life. So when you are young or you have young children, how your home can meet their needs, as well as changing to when you're older and maybe have less mobility and more challenges. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Absolutely. Again, you're really thinking about some details that were not thought about the original design, and you're improving on that, and of course adding some other personal touches and personal features to these spaces at this point. So we're kind of at the kind of the borderline, the outskirts of where we were before when we just started with just some paint and some caulk in our simple project. Now we're moving into a whole new demographic now. You may have consulted another professional, maybe an architect or somebody else for that Weekend Warrior special project. But when you move into the following project, now this is going beyond the normal scope of you just moving some fixtures around, maybe moving some plumbing, hiring somebody to move some plumbing. You're moving into something that is way, way bigger. So what we mean by that is that you want to hire someone because you're completely remodeling the space and you need somebody to move a wall or, again, move plumbing. But now it's no longer just moving plumbing from one part of the wall to another. Now you're moving it from one side of the room to the other. This is not the time to hire that buddy of a buddy that has done maybe a little light plumbing. This is a time to hire someone who really understands what you're trying to do. If you were around for the earlier presentations from LakewoodAlive, especially in February or March when we had an architect and a contractor on a panel, that's when you start to, at this point in your project, this is when you start to consult an architect, maybe an inspector, or you're now starting to pull permits to do this giant undertaking. And I really do mean giant because these projects involve removing or sometimes moving or adding framing to structural framing to a space. And as I mentioned before, you're adding insulation now in ways that you haven't done before. So adding fiberglass insulation doesn't require a contractor. You could just knock down your walls and install some fiberglass insulation on your own. But now you want to install some specialized insulation parts of your project. May require, again, a few hands and a few people to really coordinate that. So on the following slide, we show a kitchen being completely remodeled. So this country sink was not in front of this window, and in fact, there was no window there before. But here, the cabinets were specially made for this customer. She wanted regular white cabinets. However, she wanted the kitchen sink to stand out from the window so she can place maybe some flowers or something else behind the sink, just as an added bonus to that space. So she had to contract somebody who could actually make her this cabinet to actually stick out from the wall. Again, here's an example of a ceramic sink that's being used. It's a very, again, beautiful, regal product to use on a sink, but it does come with its own maintenance requirements. On the right-hand side of the same space, we're in the same home. They've added some cabinets in the background. However, in the foreground, the customer had a very simple island before, but now they're adding a more intricate island now. Here they're adding an island that you can actually sit at, and on the other side there will be a sink. Again, this required ripping up some of the flooring, adding some plumbing where there once was none, adding a drain where there was once none, and adding this nice piece of furniture that is an island now that's been custom designed for this contract or for this customer. But this is again a project that most of us will not undertake in a few weeks or a month. For me, this would probably take about a year and a half to make on my own. But the fact of the matter is that with a good architect and a good structural engineer, if that is even required, but a good contractor that knows how to move through the space and build the space properly for your needs, this is what the project will probably end up looking like.
So, Avi, this is a kitchen that I think dreams are made of, at least in my opinion.
Yes,
the pull-out
they are.
cabinets where pots and pans can go in those pull-out cabinets behind the island.
Correct.
You know, this is the Taj Mahal of kitchens. 2 sinks. So this is a really fantastic kitchen. Do you by chance know what kind of flooring is in this picture? Is this real wood or a vinyl of some kind?
It's white oak flooring.
Wood, sure. It's beautiful.
Now they have products nowadays made by Armstrong and a couple other manufacturers that you couldn't tell if it was wood or not unless you actually put your hands on it and started feeling it, because the products in vinyl have gotten so good nowadays that they mimic wood so well. So in the back of our store, we have a flooring department. I want to say maybe 2 years ago, that flooring department had mostly engineered woods or wood for flooring. It's probably covered about 80% of their floor space and displays, probably engineered wood or wood. Today, if you go back there, now it's 80% vinyl products and only 20% wood or engineered products. So it's flipped within 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and I'm
mostly the cost.
excited about those. Right. Those are good products. We're in the process of trying to get our kitchen done. And if you have been a friend of LakewoodAlive, you've probably heard me talking about this kitchen for like 4 years now at this point. We're so close. And then we were about to sign on the dotted line, and then the pandemic hit. But I have to say that vinyl, high quality, high end vinyl is where I'm going. My dog's nails will be able to withstand that. And then also, or the flooring will be able to withstand my dog's nails, but also dropping things, water from the dog bowls. I am so excited to get this product on my floor because it's going to be amazing.
It's a great product. I have it installed in our home, in a portion of our home. And our son has thrown everything at the floor, including sharp screwdrivers and anything else that may have annoyed him at the time. And the floor has withstood everything that we've all thrown at it over time. But again, for most people that walk into our house, because it's in the front of our house, just in the front portion, they believe it's wood, and it's not. It's a vinyl product. Very beautiful product. It's so good that I would even say, even in these photos here that we have in front of us, you couldn't even tell the difference nowadays of how good they are.
That's great.
I will emphasize 3 items for this remodel. So now you are in the remodel territory, of course. If you haven't been paying attention this far into the presentation, you are on a full-scale remodel. Here you have multiple people walking into your home. You're consulting multiple professionals to get this project done. Your timeline is no longer a long weekend or even a few weeks, or too long, or 2 to 3 long weekends. You're literally in remodel mode for probably the better part of a month or 2. On the following slide, I kind of go over some of these items. So timeline, how much time do you realistically have to finish your project, is something that I emphasize to everybody, mostly for the fact that TV has really spoiled our industry in some ways. The Property Brothers finish an entire house remodel inside of a 45-minute or 30-minute section. I love our Canadian friends to the north, but man, they have really destroyed expectations in our industry. Unfortunately, those remodels don't happen inside of a day or 2. Some of them do on the smaller scale side, but somebody who's ripping out an entire kitchen or bathroom, you're probably going to be under that kind of construction for at least a week or 2. And that is barring any surprises in the floor or walls. If you had perfect floors or walls and everything was square and there were no bellies or any deviations from a typical wall, then it probably could be done inside of a few hours. But for most of us, as we all know, our homes were built by craftsmen years ago. The house has settled, it's shifted, it's moved, so you have a lot of other variables to contend with. So timeline, I ask you to please be realistic with the timeline. Some of the contractors, like Dana again, who has spoken on these webinars, and if not as a panelist for LakewoodAlive in the past, knows all too well that working in Lakewood on some of our homes, you are going to get some nice surprises. They aren't things that the contractor hasn't seen, but they of course always add an extra day and a half worth of extra time. Budget. So some projects do fall somewhere near their initial budget, but I will admit that for most projects, you are going to go over. You just end up finding something that you want to change, or it's just not going to work out as much as you measure. When we were going through our own small remodel here, my wife had blue tape all over the floor to kind of indicate where cabinets were going to go or where things were going to go. Even on the day when we started installing, we had to kind of change some things around and engineer some things. It's just part of the sequence of events that happens on a larger remodel that you don't anticipate. So I do encourage you to kind of look at that budget and just be realistic. And I don't like to use this word, but sometimes it's compromises. Sometimes there are some compromises that have to be done there. As much as we want a certain color or maybe a certain fixture, well, maybe it's just not in the budget, so some other compromise should be or could be made. I think the contractors probably, that's probably one of the chief reasons they come in to talk to us is they ask us, okay, if the customer cannot afford to do it this way, how else can we do it to maintain that budget? In some respects, you can't change it, but in others, we can get creative and change some items on there. Again, I encourage you to kind of look at the kitchen and the bathroom ideas that we've explored before. So maybe not getting a fish scale mosaic tile is in your budget, but certainly a white subway tile is still a very nice finish, goes well with the space, and it's versatile, just like most of the other tile that you see. I don't like to be the bearer of that news that most projects do go over budget. Very rarely do I see a project fall within line or under. It's very surprising when it does, and usually it's kind of another red flag for something else. But I just encourage you to really consider that. And finally, the materials. For most of us, we'll use just basic building materials to redo our spaces. Sometimes you do need some specialized materials. For example, like in a bathroom, around the tile, you may want to install some fiber cement panels behind the tile that add some weatherproofing and if not some moisture resistance. Those products are a little bit more expensive, and I don't mean double the price, but compared to just maybe a sheet of OSB that's $10, this other product might be $15. So for the extra $5, yes, it's worth it to put in there. However, it does come with its own install detail. It can't be just installed with a nail. It's got to be installed with a specialized screw, and it has to be sealed around the edges so that it performs well. So some of those items, there are some of the items that a good contractor will review with you. In a kitchen, for example, if you're redoing the tile or redoing part of the kitchen and you want to install an actual exhaust fan, it may require it to break open part of the wall, add some framing so you can actually hang this actual hood that will be venting out. And now you have to find a way to get this air out. For most of us in Lakewood, we have our kitchens that face an exterior wall, but some of us don't, especially where the range is. Again, it's an added bonus if you can do it while you're remodeling the space, but it may be out of the budget. Again, these are just some considerations for you to consider as you're moving through a larger remodel in your home. Any questions so far, Allison?
I do have a question, and we are about to wrap up, folks. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to send them in. We have a question more so that looks to budget and materials from Laura. Laura says, our basement bathroom needs to be completely redone, but we're trying to do it on a tight budget since it's just the basement. Can you talk about the pros and cons of tiled showers versus prefab showers?
Okay, so prefab showers. All right, so I'll start first of all with the basement. Most basements don't have really good ventilation. Can we kind of all agree on that in some way?
Yes.
All right, so ventilation is going to be a big factor for using tile or a prefabbed or precasted, if you will, PVC panelized system in a bathroom. Personally speaking, I have the panelized in one of my bathrooms. Do I like it? Really, I really don't. It collects a lot of mold at certain points, especially in the seams. I've had to clean that out on my hands and knees more than once. I've now gotten to down to just caulking all those seams, even though that's also coming with its own set of headaches because I could be trapping non-moisture behind the silicone that I put on that I've applied to those seams. Is it an easy install? Yes, it is, especially on the PVC panelized systems. So it's easier, it's less costly to do it that way. On the tile side, I would probably install tile. I'd probably remove this system out of one of my bathrooms, and install tile, but it wouldn't be like that mosaic tile that we showed earlier in the slides, or the fish scale tile. Probably be a very simple tile that I know that can clean very well. The downside to either system is that basements happen to be poorly ventilated. They happen to trap a little bit more moisture than some of our other rooms, and they're dark most times of the year. So this is a perfect breeding ground for all sorts of stuff to grow there. So there really isn't a performance advantage one or over the other. It's more of a budgetary advantage from one to the other. And as far as a cleanliness or maintenance, you're kind of both on par. One way or the other, you will end up scrubbing one or the other eventually, unfortunately.
Great. The next question I have is from Sue. Sue asks, what expertise do you start with when using professionals to remodel a kitchen? An architect, construction engineer, contractor, designer, combination?
Good question. So as part of the wrapping up of this presentation, I was going to mention, when you start to work with a contractor, any good contractor will present you with options, but also a contract and a timeline. And of course, any good contractor will tell you that timeline is not set in stone, that there will be some things that come up. But certainly starting off with a reputable contractor, and I'm sure Allison has a great list to offer to everybody here today, but a reputable contractor will be able to kind of sit down with you and outline exactly what's going to happen as your project evolves. Also, again, most of them will know your budget, will work within your budget, will offer some options as well. Generally speaking, most of the contractors that we work with, they do have some design services, but sometimes they don't. So depending on what type of project you have going, or you'd like to accomplish for that matter, I've seen probably about 4 to 5 different varieties of contractors that come in. We have a typical contractor that can do siding and windows and doors and whatnot. And then you have a more specialized contractor that is doing just kitchens and baths and remodels on the interior portion of a space. And then you do have a design build firm. But a design build firm, you're hiring them to also pick out the finishes, painting. They're completely reimagining the space for you. Now you do pay for that consultation, whereas a regular contractor may only charge you for the initial estimate. But a design build firm is certainly going to charge you for the hours that they're putting into the work, because they're not only designing the space, but they're designing the kitchen, the cabinets, how they'll be installed, the finishes on the cabinets, everything literally from the ground up. I hope that answers that question. I know that's kind of vague.
I think it does. And if you were on our How to Contract a Repair workshop, Sue says yes, I did. So thank you. I did our How to Contract a Repair workshop on Thursday, and I shared my insight through our kitchen process. And I found, we interviewed probably 3 or 4 contractors, maybe 6 contractors, and some were super creative and said, this is the vision that I have for you, and this is where I think we can go. Others said, you tell me what to do and I'll do what you tell me. So I think you'll be able to learn the abilities of your contractor and where their strengths are just by talking to them, interviewing them, and going through that process with them. My husband and I, we don't often agree on finishes. So we brought in an architect to do a quick drawing for us that we paid for. It wasn't plans, but just a quick drawing so that we could kind of hash out what we wanted and what each of our musts were before we brought in a contractor, because we didn't want to have a heated discussion in front of the contractor about those things. So we worked it all out, had our plan moving into it, and then brought in the contractor because we knew what our musts were before we started that process. So I think just by talking to people, you'll get a good feel. And
Chuck McGetrick is one of the architects that we use, and has been on the panels as well for LakewoodAlive. as just a real world example, a customer that I provided Chuck McGettrick's contact information to called me this past week and said, hey, we sat down with Chuck last fall, right around September, October, to talk about our remodel. It's taken them this long to get the final touches on that blueprint done. So basically October to now. So there's a 7-month design schedule there, and that was going. And I asked Chuck how many times were you speaking to this customer, and he said probably every 2 weeks they were making some type of changes, or at least trying to get some details ironed out. And then he had to consult a structural engineer to make some changes as well. So it's not an overnight or a 1-week process when you start speaking to an architect and getting all of those parties involved. It will take some time, but that's why I also emphasize as part of the timeline, how much time do you realistically have to finish the project? Please keep in mind that you'll be consulting other professionals who have other customers as well at the same time, and you're trying to work through that project.
Absolutely. And I think also trying to hash out your look and feel, especially if you and your partner are not always on the same page with that. Get to know what everyone must have. Like in our kitchen, we need to have storage and a high-end stove. My husband loves to cook, so we want to make sure we have those things. I am the cleaner of the house. Currently, we have white Formica. That's awful. And I have a magic eraser basically attached to my neck as I'm walking around, erasing all of the life that happens in my kitchen. So I want a high-end kitchen countertop that's going to be, non-destructible, easy to handle, and can hold up. I can cut something on it and it's not going to damage it. So really just identifying in your spaces what are musts and what would be niceties, I think really will go a long way.
Absolutely.
All right, so I think we've answered all of our questions. Again, I just want to say thank you, Avi. I always love our time together. This presentation was wonderful. I really appreciate you taking the time. As I mentioned, Avi is from Cleveland Lumber. Tell us a little bit about the store. Is it open right now? Should people give a call, or can they stop by, or what's happening over there at Cleveland Lumber?
It's business as usual. It's just that everyone's wearing a mask. That's all we ask, is that everyone that comes into the store just protects themselves and the employees that are there. Of course, we're under some guidelines and some strict rules from the governor's office. So all of our employees have protection equipment on, and we're abiding by the 6-foot rule, of course, and we're trying to abide by all those rules. So we are operating as usual. It's just that it's a little bit more detail now. That's all.
Okay, great. So give our friends at Cleveland Lumber a call if you have any questions about what materials they have, whether it's cabinets or flooring or anything else. They are great friends of the organization. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Avi. Just a reminder, sorry about my chatty dog here in the background. Our next workshop is Knowing Your Home Universal Design, and we're partnering with Maximum Accessible Housing of Ohio, really to help you design a home and a project to meet you at all aspects of your life. That'll be on Thursday, June 11th from 7 to 8:30. And again, as I mentioned, all of our workshops moving forward, at least for the rest of this year, will be on the web virtually. So I do want to thank you all for spending your morning with us. Check us out, LakewoodAlive.org. And if you have any questions about anything you heard today or about your project that's coming up or need help finding contractors, feel free to reach out. Our contact information is on our website. Our phone number is 216-521-0655. And if you want to reach me, I'm option number 3. So thank you all. Enjoy this beautiful day, and we'll see you again real soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Avi.